Hello and welcome to video 2. Now in this video I'll be showing you how you can take all of your data from your current Storyteller scene here and how you can push that data over into a scene data asset which our characters can make use of. Now what we actually want here is, for example, our character here. We have 4 characters in the scene here and we have 4 characters in our story project. So we want to link these characters. So for example, we want to link this character to our main character here. We want to link this one to NPC2 and so on and so on. And it's going to be quite easy to do, and I'll show you right now. So I'm going to go ahead and select my scene data folder here. This is just where I keep my scene data assets. I'm going to right click, go to create, go to GameBridge and scene data. I'm just going to hit enter. I'm going to call this new scene data. We're going to open up GameBridge. If you don't have it open, you just right click, go to window and GameBridge. And because we have our scene data asset selected, it shows us this UI. And here we can select different scenes whose data we want to push over to the scene data. So if we went to our scene here and we added a bunch of new scenes, we would see the scenes appear here. But we're only working with one scene, and that's the scene called main scene here. So let's click that scene and then click push. And now all that scene data is now in our scene data asset. So let's select our character here and let's add a character to it. So a character to each of them. And the next thing we want to do here is assign our scene data to it. So let's scroll down. So on our character component here that we just added, it's requesting a scene data. So let's drag in the scene data. And now let's link up the characters. So who do we want this particular character to represent? We have a drop down list here. We can choose either NPC 1, 2, 3 or main character. So let's select our main character here and click setup. And now that's set up our character for us. So if we select the character up here and we select literally any node, we get to see a reflected data set which shows the node data that we've selected in the Storyteller canvas. So let's select our main character here, and if we were to scroll down here, we'd see that it says is not player turn on player. We click this button so that the crown turns gold, and that means that this character is now your main, is now your identified as your player. And the very next thing we're going to do is do the same for the other characters, except we won't turn on player for them. So we drag in the scene data, and this one we want to be NPC1 set up. We want this one to be NPC2, and we want this one to be NPC3. And now the next thing that we need to do, since we have now set up our final NPC here, is that we need to add some trigger areas. So on our main character here, let's go to the scene, and on our character here, we're going to add a player trigger, and on our NPCs we're going to be adding NPC triggers. So let's just go to add component for our player, and let's add a player trigger. Now how this works is that if we walk up to if we enter any trigger area that's tagged with, NPC, then that means we've chosen to speak to an NPC. Now how this plays out in Storyteller is like this. So we have our main character here, and the first interaction is a route. Now again, everything in Storyteller works based on time when an interaction happens. So if you look in the timeline here, we do have things arranged in a way that shows when particular interactions happen. And if we, for example, sample NPC1 and our main character's interaction, let's disable those a little and open this, we get to see the story flow in our story sampler editor here. And this is something that we can play back. We can either scrub the timeline here or hit the play button and play this back. So the order in which your interactions are placed is very important. So I'm going to stop this and I'm going to close this. So remembering the order of interaction, we have a initial interaction here at the very front. And again, everything works based on time. And our very first bit of dialogue for, let's say, NPC1 is hey NPC1, I need to get into the hangar, which is this bit of dialogue here. Let's just route to it. And if we check the properties here, we'll see it says, hey NPC1, I need to get into the hangar. And if we sample it, we'll see that's it. So that's our first bit of dialogue. And it's currently set to start at 0 seconds. Now, again, remember everything works based on time. So this route node here needs to be the very first thing that's processed. So if we select it, we'll see that we set its start time to -1. So that means it's processed before every other node data. Now, this is very important because this is where our initial decision is made, whether as to which NPC we're going to speak to. So if we decide to speak to NPC1, then we're going to go down this path, which links us to NPC1 interaction. If we choose to speak to NPC2, then we'll go down a path that links to NPC2 interaction. And then if not, then we'll speak to NPC3. Now, if we go ahead and we'll just select our characters here and we scroll up, we'll see there's a use route number. Now your route number needs to match the position of a character in the very first route here. So if we check our route here, link to NPC1 is on route 0, link to NPC2 is on route 1, and link to NPC3 is on route 2. And as you can see, when I switch the routes, the dialogue changes there. That's exactly what's going to happen in game. So we need to ensure that our route numbers are set. So for NPC1, the route number is going to be 0. For NPC2, the route number is going to be 1. And for NPC3, the route number is going to be 2. And now we can add our triggers to it. So if we added the player trigger. So if we walk up to NPC1, once NPC1's NPC trigger area, then it's going to read NPC1's route number and determine whether or not we're going to be speaking to, and it's going to, well, it's just basically going to say, all right, speak to NPC1. If we walk up to NPC2, it's going to look at its route number and say, okay, we need to speak to NPC2. So it's actually that simple. So this one's already set up. So if I go to the NPC here and go to the scene, I'm going to go to game object, 3D object, and I'm going to create a plane. I'm going to drag it onto NPC1. I'm going to call it trigger area. And then I'm going to remove the, actually I'm just going to make it convex and is trigger. I'm going to remove the mesh renderer. And I'm going to scale it down. Gonna position it at 0, 0, 0. And let's scale it again. Don't make it stick out too much. We want it to be about there is perfect. All right, so if we walk onto this area, we're going to end up speaking to NPC1, but we need to add a NPC trigger to this. So I'm going to go NPC trigger, and NPC trigger only requests the NPC character or whatever your character is. So I'm going to drag in NPC1. And I'm going to tag this NPC trigger with NPC. I'm going to duplicate this twice, duplicate, duplicate, and I'm going to drag it onto NPC2 and one onto NPC3. I'm going to position it at 0, 0, 0. And let's replace this with NPC2. Don't forget that bit because it won't work if you're still using the NPC1. And let's position this one at 0. All right, so that one seems to be in the right position. All right, that's seem perfect. All right. Let me check this. All right, there we go. Maybe pull it out like that. And let's check NPC2's trigger area. Not bad. All right, this is fine. Maybe move it a little bit more. All right, there we go. So we just set up our trigger areas. Now there's another thing we need to set up, and that's our interface. Where's our UI going to come from? So we have this stage canvas here. And again, you can use any kind of UI setup you want, but there's some requirements. There's some things that the game bridge requires. So if we open up the game bridge on our main character, so that's the character whose crown is gold and is the player. So if we open up the general settings here, fallout, we go to the UI settings. We have a name area, a UI dialog area, and that's just requesting an area where it can display the character's name, where it can display the character's dialog, if it uses dialog, if we're going to be using a previous button and a next button. So we don't want to be using a previous button, but we want to add the UI stuff to it. So let's add the name area to this. Dialog is going to go here. Next button, this one. And we need to assign a route parent. Now route button parent, there it is. And now the route button parent is just a game object that we're going to be instancing some buttons to, and those buttons are going to represent decisions that our character can make. So I do have some prefabs here already for some route buttons. So if I go to UI, we have some route buttons here. So if I select the character, scroll down, I'm going to drag in this button type A. And let's run the scene and see if we forgot anything or if it just works. Oh, let's turn this off. Turn off the stage canvas. Oh, one more thing to do. So our initial interaction, the reason why we set this to -1 is because we want to run a very specific function on this. So select the route, and on our character here, see we're using for route here. We want to run a function on this. So I'm going to go automatic start and add two functions here. I'm going to say stage canvas. Game object set active to true, and I'm going to say here character continue on route. All right, now this continue on route is going to be used when you're choosing who to speak to. A specific value is set indicating which particular route we need to go on. So if we speak to NPC1, it's going to pass a value into the continue on route function, which is going to be equal to 0. It's going to take us to route path 0, which is the interaction with NPC1. So if we run the scene now, we should be able to speak to NPC1 and our interactions will appear. All right, so here you go. So this is our initial interaction. You can see here we have these two buttons, which we don't actually want to see. We don't want to see this. We want this decision to be made automatically for us. So it says, hey, NPC1, I need to get into the hangar. We don't want to actually make that decision ourselves. We can click it, and it's going to ask, do you have your ID? And then we can choose one of these. We can say, yes, we found it. And then you say, okay, well, I'm going to scan it for the ID. And then he says no ID found, and we can say sorry I lied, and then he's gonna say next time if you come back, if you don't have your ID, I'll never let you in. And that's the end of that dialogue. But what I'm gonna do now is that I'm going to go back to the main scene. This is a duplicated scene just to show you how it was set up, and see it was actually quite simple and we didn't write any code whatsoever. So I'm just gonna go back to the first scene. right, here's our completed scene. And this one we can actually play through because everything's already been set up fully. So again, we go ahead and we speak to our NPC. And this time we go straight into the dialogue, because in Storyteller here, if we select our main character, and see, this is where that big difference between, so this is where that flexibility comes into play. So we're using the very same Storyteller scene in two different scenes that have two completely different setups. And we can do that because we're using scene data. And the scene data itself is what houses the data that matches the content you're seeing in the canvas here. So we don't actually destroy any data inside of the canvas. All right, so back here. So in the last example, we cite, say, hey, NPC1, I need to go into the hangar, and it showed us a blank button area. If we select this one, we'll see that we have a function set up here using our condition system. And you'll find that throughout the project, what we use is mostly the condition system to determine interactions. We didn't have to write any additional scripts. There is one script here, which is the example condition 2 script, and the touched ID card script. Actually very short. I'll go into those scripts in the next video, if we don't complete everything in this video. Now, so here's the function here, and it says if our main character, example condition 2 dot spoke to NPC1 is equal to false, then we'll go to route 0. So if we have not already spoken to this character, then we'll go to route 0. If we've already spoken to the character, then we'll instead go to route 1, which is this path, which changes the entire branch of dialogue. So now our interaction looks like this. Okay, and now in the next video, what we're going to be doing is playing through the entire game scene and trying to achieve the objective of going into the hangar and completing the task. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.